Hello again everyone, my name is Nilaban and today I will show you how to set up a FTP server behind a router. Now first we need to download our FTP server. I have chosen Core FTP server. Just type in Core FTP server from Google and download that program. Now another thing we need to know before we set up the server, we need to know the IP address of this computer and the gateway or the router's address. First, let's do a command prompt and do a ipconfig. Try it again, sorry, cmd, then ipconfig. Now we need to see the IP address of this computer or the computer that will be running the server. As you can see here, the IP address is 192.168.2.110. Keep a note of that. Also keep a note of the gateway address 192.168.2.1. This most likely would be our router's IP. We will need this later. Okay, so we can close this off. Keep a note of this information because we will be using it again. Okay, I already downloaded the server program, Core FTP server. You can do, as I said, a web search. Just click on it to install the program. Click I agree. Click next. Click install. It's a small program, so it no readme, so it installs pretty quickly. Just minimize this. Okay, now as you can see, the shortcut here for the FTP server. Double click on the server program to launch it. Then we come up to this window. First we need to set it up. Click setup. In this case, I had this part set up already. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to show you what I did. Under domain name, you can put your name. On the IP address, you put the IP address of the computer that is running the server. In this case, it's this computer. You leave the port as 21 as the default port. The base directory, you need to set the directory that you want to share on your computer. Click the button here, and in my case I went and I shared a folder inside here. This is the folder that we will be sharing on the server. Okay, this is the base directory. Leave everything else pretty much as the default and click OK. Now highlight this section and click new. When you click the new button, you actually will set another entry in this area here. So it may be blank in your window. Click new to come to this screen. Now on this screen you add your username and password to access the server. Permissions, but we won't use the script, and some security information. Let's start with the general. I put in a username and password. For this purpose I use my name, Neil. Okay. Again, set your home directory here. Click on this button here. Set to the same directory that you want to share. this case I'm sharing my FTP server directory. Okay, so you set that here, your home directory. You can leave everything else as the default. I click always allow login, this feature here. Click on permissions to your left. Now under permissions, you need to add this field here. Click on the add button, and actually you're adding the path to the directory again. Click on the add button and path, same directory that you set in the other screens. You go straight to that directory again, the shared directory, and set it up here. Okay, my FTP server. When you do that, you will have this information will be in the screen. Highlight the screen and set the file permissions. In this case I set read only, write, pen. This is where you set the permissions for remote user to access your folder. Also click inherit rules for subdirectories so that they will also have access to the subdirectories in the folder. When this is done, you can click script but leave that as is. Click on security. Under security, tick the user does not require authentication and click OK. Now your screen should look like this. If you click here, you can edit your permission screen, and if you click here, you can edit your main screen. Okay, click OK. Now one note that you should keep in mind is that you must make sure that you are not running a second server. If you have more than one FTP server running on the computer, it's going to use the port and you will get an error message. So you should disable any other FTP server that you have on your computer before you connect to this one. Click OK. And then you start your server. You have your start button. You have access rules. You have start service as a service. You can skip the registration. You have the quit button to close off the program. You should tick this button auto start service when the machine starts, so it will start as a service. I have also added a rule here, access rule, where I set the IP range of my router, which is 2.1 to 254. All you need to do is just click add, and you can add whatever you want. Okay, I have this already. Allow access to the range of IP 192.168.2.1 to 192.168.2.254. This allows access within this range of IPs. Click OK and start your server. Click start button. Now here you would see where that your server is started properly. Start domain, name active. Now to test your server to see if it's working, we can do open a web browser and type in the IP address of this FTP server. Type FTP colon 192.168.2.110, which is the IP address of this FTP server. Here we have the login name and address. It was set to automatic on my machine. So let's put in the username and password. Click OK. And here you would see the directory that I shared. Here's my FTP directory that I shared, and here are the files that I shared in the directory. So now I'm sure that my server is working on the machine. Now we need to set up the server to work behind the router. We can close off the screen. Now you can minimize your FTP server. Let's go to the web browser again. We're going to check the IP of the router, your external IP of the router, and we're going to set port forwarding on the router. First, let's go into our router and check the subnet port forwarding. In order to get into the router, we would need the username and password of the router. Now remember that router, the gateway address of this computer is equivalent to the router address. So we type in the gateway or the router address, which is 168.2.1. And this should bring us, sorry, that's not 2.1. Okay, so it brings out the router. I have my router username and password already. Okay, so we are into the router. Now once you're into the router, go to Application and Gaming. Now remember the IP address that we would want to port forward to. The IP address is the machine that the server runs on, which is 192.168.2.110, which is this computer. So what we're going to do, we're going to set FTP port, leave this as default, and the IP address of the computer is 110. We tick this box here, click the Save Settings button. Now that's single port forwarding. I also like to set the port on the port range forwarding also. So click on port range forwarding also. You can type in the name of the application, which is FTP server. Your start port is 21, end port is 21. Leave the protocol as boot protocol, and you set your IP address of the computer with the server. You click enable and you click your save button. Now this is setting the port forwarding for your router. Okay, once this is saved, okay, now we can close off your router. But before we go, we need to check the IP address, your external IP address of this router. So what we need to do, we can do a Google search. Go to Google and type in what is my IP. Or my IP address, and this will take us to different sites that will give you your IP address. Let me choose, let's choose this one and see if it gives me my IP address, my external IP address of my router. And as you can see here, my external IP address is 190.213.97 and 211. Keep a note of this IP address because this is what you'll be using externally to come into your router on your network. Okay, so we can close this off now that we got the IP address external router. Okay, so all we need to do now is to use that external IP to connect to our FTP server. Okay, just a last note to remember that if you need to connect to your FTP server from externally or remotely, you need to put in the external address together with your :20. So in your URL web browser of your external machine, you're going to type ftp://192.213.97.211:21. And this is how you will get through the router and onto your FTP server, and it will ask you for your login, and then you should be on. Okay, so this concludes my installation and setup of the FTP server behind a router. Thank you for watching.